welcome to the Jeff Bullis Show. Today I have with me Aggelos Mouzakitis. Now, from that name, you'd guess that he's actually Greek. If you are well-read, intelligent, which all my guests, all my listeners on the show are, of course, so they would have already worked that out. So, just a little bit about Aggelos. He's among the first customer-led experts in the world. He is the CEO of Growth Sandwich and has helped more than 100 software as a service companies, and that is popularly known as SaaS as the acronym. He's helped 100 software as a service companies grow. Software as a service companies are hiring to organise, design and execute programs that infuse the whole company with qualitative data, empathy and the necessary knowledge to address any growth dilemma. Aggelos has mentored more than 1,000 software as a service marketers and founders, and today we're going to talk about detailed growth and marketing strategies and how he has helped them and also his entrepreneurial journey. So welcome to the show, Aggelos.
Jeff, thank you for having me, and I'm actually very surprised and honored that you managed to pronounce my surname. Thank you very much for that.
I practiced in the bathroom 100 times, that's why. Okay, so the other thing that I didn't mention about Aggelos is that he talks a lot about data, but he also has got a master's in psychoanalysis and psychotherapy. So anyone here needs a bit of help, just hang in there and we might be able to do some good counselling for you along the way, because he's not a trained psychotherapist as in practicing, but obviously the intersection of data and science meets empathy, I think it's a pretty happy place to be, frankly. So, I'm looking forward to your insight. So, Aggelos, the big question here is, how did you get into, consulting and doing the numbers and qualitative research for software as a service companies? How did this happen?
Okay, thank you for that, Jeff. So, I started as a marketer. I was working as a marketer for 6 or 7 years until I reached senior positions and head positions. But at some point, I started realizing that my efforts weren't weren't working as they used to work at the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
That led me to start thinking and wondering, what is it that makes a marketing strategy or a marketing campaign work versus another one that hasn't worked, that failed? What is the element that makes my marketing work in one time and the same person doing the same marketing failing the other time? So that led me to product and how products are designed and product market fit. And I started going very deep into how can we create products that actually fit with the market that they are built for.
Mm-hmm.
And again, the one thing led to the other, and that drove me to customer research, which is basically the science of deeply understanding the needs, the problems, motivations, the fears of consumers in order to deliver the solutions and the products that answer to these. So that's why customer research, that's why consulting, SaaS companies, and also that's why psychotherapy, because at the end of the day, it's the human mind, it's how the human mind works. And everything that we do in product design and customer research has a basis on psychotherapy and psychology. Just a very quick example is behaviorism. Behaviorism is one of the most popular psychology frameworks, if I may say, and the whole gaming industry is based on that. Rewards and punishments based on something. So how the human mind takes decisions and does stuff is something that excites me, and that's how I mix it with software companies.
That's very interesting, because a lot of social media platforms are built to be addictive, and they actually hire neuroscientists to make sure they're addictive, and they do a damn good job, as we've noticed over the last 10 or 12 years.
Exactly.
Does that ever creep into your product design? Not healthy addiction for something that's going to help someone. Is that part of what you do sometimes?
Yes and no. There have been times where we tried to make a product more sticky,
Yes.
but the level of stickiness that the online gaming industry creates goes up to, in my point of view, up to unethical levels and up to levels that need to be
Yep.
regulated at some point because they resemble the gambling industry.
Yep.
So if someone actually faces the threat of losing his all of his money, we need to regulate that just the way that we regulate smoking, alcohol, and everything else. Um, so no, I wouldn't go there, but creating rewards and punishments and using behaviorism and psychology to make a product funnier to use and stickier to the minds of the customers, I don't think is negative. In fact, is good product design. So
Mm.
why not?
Yeah, I totally agree. I think there's a fine line between pleasure and pain, um, and also between, I suppose, a focused positive obsession, and also I suppose, a deadly or bad obsession. And it's true is that the products like Facebook design interface, user design, user interface, a lot of the social media platforms, um, they certainly have used that, made stickiness to a whole new level. And you can even see it with something like, even it even appears on your text. Like, so you put an answer in, in response to someone else's text, then you can see the little dots happening at the bottom of the text response, and they're responding back and going, "What are they going to say? What are they going to say?" These are just little things, but when you add a whole lot of little things up, then it can make a product quite sticky and invoke that elements of being human that make the product easy to sell and also stop churn. So before we get into that sort of topic, I'm going to talk about some case studies and churn because that's one of the biggest issues with software as a service companies and subscription. You don't want to sign them up and then lose them to a high churn rate. So you're working for some other companies as a product manager in the marketing sphere. You're finding that wasn't working as well as you used to. So what made you step into the unknown and start your own business? What was that? Was there a moment, can you remember, or was there something that motivated you to do that, to step to as they said in Joseph Campbell's Cross the Threshold, in other words, start a new initiative. Um, was there a moment that you can remember, or was it just a creeping motivation?
Um, the circumstances are not really the ones that can become a billboard, are not really motivating. In fact, the reason is that I realized I'm unemployable, that it's my just destiny to do that, to have freedom and to work on things that I like because I get bored extremely easily, because I don't enjoy being forced to work with people that I necessarily don't like,
Mm-hmm.
and that makes me very cranky. So it's not a good thing. I realized I'm unemployable, exactly the way I'm saying it, and that I will be a way better person, a way better colleague, a way better professional if I just do whatever I like.
Mm.
Now, the future was different because I realized that when you actually have a business, you have more bosses and more people to work with that you necessarily do not like.
Mm-hmm.
But I can guarantee that if you reach a level of seniority and respect among your community, that you can pick the people that you work, it gets crazy interesting and very enjoyable. So I feel very good that I have reached that level now, that I can say, look, I won't work for the next 3 months. I will
Mm.
just rest. I will crush an island, a Greek island, and then I will work during the winter to get some money and save for next summer. So when you reach that level, it's great. It's awesome. Do it.
I totally get that. I did. I pretty well work my own hours. I do what I love, any rate. So, And yeah, I did a digital nomad Europe trip for 3 months 2 years ago before COVID hit. Luckily, got that in, and just experimented with living life differently, and they continue to run the business. And learn a lot from that, and I will do it again. But I'll do it a little bit differently because it was an experiment. It was basically I was testing to see what worked and what didn't, and would change it next time. But that's what you got to do. I think it's just stepping into trying something new, get out of your comfort zone, or maybe chase your comfort zone. Really, that's what I was doing, I suppose. But yeah, so you made the decision to go and work for yourself, and what? So you go into that, and you've chosen software as a service companies. Why did you choose them as a market segment?
I didn't start with SaaS companies. It wasn't my first decision. To be honest, my first decision was any company that would give me money, because I had to live. I left my morning job, so I had to put food on the table, and so the first few months, or if I may say, even the first year, or even more than that, were very difficult, and I wasn't very picky, and I didn't have the time and the luxury to think positioning.
Mm-hmm.
So the first clients were just clients that were, and I knew my stuff, but it's totally different to market for a company your whole life, to be an in-house marketer, and totally different to be marketer of yourself. Things change.
Mm-hmm.
You have to be, you have to approach things differently because it's your wallet. It's your wallet, it's your results, and it's a matter of paying your rent or not at the end of the month. Um, so I didn't start with B2B SaaS. B2B SaaS came afterwards, and especially B2B SaaS, uh, because because I loved doing customer research and improving products. So the best environment for me to do what I love was B2B SaaS for certain reasons. First, because most of them or all of them are subscription businesses. And second, because the success of a B2B SaaS and the commercial success
Mm-hmm.
isn't connected anymore to a good punchline or a good marketing campaign as things used to be 10 years
Yep.
ago or 15 years ago,
Yep.
but it's very well connected and dependent to the quality of the product. So the stakes are very high. The level of the level that you have to work is very high when it comes to B2B SaaS. You have to
Yep.
be
It is.
stellar, surgically accurate in what you do, and that's why I picked it.
Yeah, and it's software as a service companies have an advantage in a sense, and I think we're in the middle of a huge shift in the business world. That's some of the biggest changes in business world we've had in, I think, centuries, frankly. One, we've got access to global markets like we've never had before. Number two, we can work remotely. And number three, we're dealing with whole different profit and business models that never existed before. Now, the great thing about software as a service companies that are run well is that they've got very high margins, because they can scale. See, that's the other thing that's great about software as a service companies. So, do you deal with software as a service companies that can that are just starting? Are they sort of got a product that's selling, they're making money, or they're still making big losses and need to be, uh, you know, making sure that they win? I suppose there's two battles that software as a service companies do, especially if they're chasing global domination. Number one, they've got to win a technology war. In other words, they've got to be the leaders in tech for their industry. Number two, they've also got to win the sales and market share war. They're the two battles that software as a service companies have to win. Because quite often at the end of the day, there's only two or three at the top that really are making the serious money, and the rest are fighting for scraps. So do you work for any particular stages of software as a service companies?
I work for software as a service companies that have reached product market fit, which practically means that they have proven that they
Mm-hmm.
are building and working towards a product that has found a reasonable amount of users to resonate with. So have reached and have surpassed product market fit, and they are going towards the growth stage. From an investment point of view, that means A series, B series, and some big seed level invested companies. From a team size point of view, I would say at least 15 people, but up to 200 people. So not too small, but not too big for a startup either, just reaching the growth point. And this is my favorite stage, because this is the most dangerous one. When you are an early stage business, you have to prove that you have a reason to exist. And that makes sense, okay? Some companies fail that, some companies succeed that. But then the stage that you raise the big money is the stage that you make the most costly mistakes. The stakes are very high at this point in time, and every decision, every wrong decision that you make will cost your survival. And people watch you, people see you, people see what you do. You don't have the luxury to make big mistakes. You have to change your mindset, and this is the time that you know the big castles fall apart. That's why I love working with them, because my work has an impact, a big impact towards what they do.
Mm-hmm. So that makes me think about what drives you and what keeps you, gets you up each day to do what you do. And I think I heard the word curiosity as one of those. You are curious to see how you can make them work. What are some of the motivations for you as an entrepreneur that really get you up to do what you do? And is that still the same as when you started?
Oh, not really. Definitely not. The first, I would say, 3 or 4 years of this journey were basically superficial. Um, I just wanted to make money and be successful,
Mm-hmm.
and just chasing success the way that we see it in LinkedIn and Facebook quotes and magazines and all these nonsense. I, I was just copying other people, just trying to be one of these success stories. But then everything changed. Um, Things happened in my personal life. I I just wasn't. I felt insecure about my health at some point. I had a very serious um, burnout.
Mm-hmm.
And if you ask me now, I'll tell you what motivates me is quality of life and science.
Mm-hmm.
So it's all about the science of things. Every penny that I make, I invest it back to the quality of my life and my science, and I'm happy with that. I'm super happy actually. I don't worry about copying anybody. I don't care about other people's success, and I only compare myself with my yesterday's self. Uh, and I think a lot of people struggle with that imposter syndrome, trying to copy someone, trying
Mm-hmm.
to being influenced by success the way that the Western society tries to perceive it and pass it around. And
Mm-hmm.
I think that's very wrong. And it's the source of depression um, and low self esteem and such stuff.
Mm-hmm. So you mentioned a word before, which was the word freedom. And so, what do you mean by freedom? Because you mentioned a lifestyle where you said you could choose to work hard during winter and then escape during summer. So, is that freedom for you?
Freedom is to be able to travel and work. Freedom is to be able to say, I won't work today because I want to spend time with my kid or with my wife, or see friends or rest because I need to rest now. Um, Freedom is to be able to fire a client because he or she is making your life miserable and
Mm-hmm.
not feeling stressed that this will compromise your quality of life.
Mm-hmm.
Freedom is to be able to prioritize uh, luxurious things like your rest overwork. And also, freedom is to be able to prioritize science over commercial success sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
To be able to say, no, I want to do that because it's not really scientific, it's just for the money, but I prefer doing science. All these things are freedom. Freedom doesn't come if you're so successful that you have a very fat bank account that you don't care. In fact, it, it's not the opposite, but it's not like that. Freedom comes when you have so much success, but not too much success. You still have the motivation to
Mm-hmm.
wake up and try, but you're not on the other side working to survive. I think that's the best state to be.
Mm-hmm.
What
I
do you
love
think?
that. I think that's fabulous. In fact, I've created a framework for that I've called the Freedom Code, and we'll talk about that another stage. But I basically work how I want to work. I can take a day off if I want. I've got a team that supports me, so I buy time. They do the things that I'm not good at. I've got the freedom to go and work in another country and explore that while I work, which I did very focused way 2 years ago. I love what you're saying. I think you revealed what freedom should be for most people. The other thing that uh, I'm thinking about what you're doing is, in other words, you said you want to do more science rather than just make more money. Does that mean that you are so curious about what the science is going to show you that you're just curious about the results, so that's enough? Is it sometimes just being so curious? Is that also what drives you to learn?
Oh, Jeff, how the human mind is one of the most fascinating things that I
It
have
is. Mm-hmm.
encountered in my life. That our minds are so irrational
Mm-hmm.
that every day it fascinates me. Let me give you a very small example from my work, not my work, but my field. 20 years ago, there was a Thai team, a team from Thailand that
Mm-hmm.
invented a new energy drink, and they tested it with testers, and 97% of the testers said that the drink is horrible.
Mm-hmm.
They launched it anyway, and this drink is Red Bull, and it's
That's
a
right.
multi-billion-dollar business.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason for that is because when you drink Red Bull, you don't expect it to taste great because the consumer action resembles when you buy medicine. Um, if it tastes very well, it probably means that it doesn't do the job that it promises. Look,
Mm-hmm.
isn't that crazy?
Mm-hmm.
And building products by unpacking these forces in our minds and these instincts, and then building products that satisfy them is the most satisfying thing that I have done in my life, and gives me this pleasing, controlling feeling that I know is my narc part, or the
Mm-hmm.
narc part of my personality, but it gives you this very, very satisfying and addictive control feeling over others, which isn't really applicable to anything, but it just gives you that feeling. And I find that extremely satisfying.
So what you find satisfaction from is experimenting with products and growth hacking or marketing tactics that touch people's hearts and souls and minds, because the human mind is fascinating. I'm in the middle of reading a book at the moment, which is talking about the intersection of physics and consciousness. And yeah, I'm one of the big things that I'm certainly curious about is what drives us, and that's why I asked you what motivates you. And you started with the external things motivated me: money, success, as seen by the outside, external. Then you're saying now that the real powerful thing for you now is internal motivation. And actually, that's the easiest one to sustain. And I think what you've shared is just fascinating, and it's an area for me that I ask that question every day on reflection, and yeah, it's such a fascinating part of being human is our mind, which, and you can sit down, you can read a book, and what happens? Just random, we're a random thought generator. Just stuff comes in, you're going, where did that come from? And then another thought pops up. Sometimes I find that I'm getting a notebook on my phone with the notes factor, and I'm capturing the thought as it comes in because I'm going, I can use that for that, or I can use this for that. So we're random thought generators. We don't know where that comes from, but it comes from consciousness. What's consciousness? We're still trying to work that out. Anyway, so let's move on to another topic. So you started this journey and you're helping people. What are some of your best success and case studies that in companies that you work with? What's some of your best success stories? You mentioned a company that I noticed we mentioned before, Whereby. Maybe tell me about that, because one of the challenges is that you can get a customer as a software as a service company, and you typically software as a service companies typically go into a subscription model. Is that correct?
Most of the businesses are working on a subscription model, indeed.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So the challenge with that, isn't it, that you get them on board, and if they're not quite happy, in other words, the product fit isn't good, or they're not happy with the product or service or platform, they leave. That's called churn. Now, so before we get to Whereby, what are some of the best, I suppose, sales marketing stories you have? And then we're going to talk about Whereby and how can you stop them leaving. So let's talk about maybe a good success story in terms of sales and growth. Maybe, and I think the term you may have used in some of your, that I've read about from you, is growth hacking. In other words, what platforms work and what don't. So what's one of your most successful sales marketing clients? If you can mention them, that'd be great. Otherwise, just they can remain anonymous. That's fine.
Generally speaking, I prefer to stay far from the term growth hacking, not because it's a bad term, but because it's misused by a lot of people, from growth hackers, basically. And the problem with growth hacking and the way that it is used at the moment is that it creates the expectation of a silver bullet, of an easy solution.
Yep.
And so for me, being a researcher and a product researcher that helps go to market, SaaS businesses go to market better, the term hacking is like my kryptonite, because the word research sits on the other side. It gives the perception of something that takes time, costs, and has a negative connotation. That's the negative connotation that it gives. So I stay away from that. But to be honest with you, if I may use the term growth hack, I think research is the only growth hack that exists at the moment. So if I would share a very quick story about a commercial story about a company that I worked with, would be a software company that would build a solution where agencies and freelancers would be able to share their HTML5 content and banners with their clients, and then their clients would be able to pinpoint feedback within this HTML. Now, this might sound a little bit boring. What is HTML? What are all that? HTML is code, and the problem behind that is that the only way at the moment for a company or a designer that builds HTML stuff to share them and get feedback is to zip them. I think everybody knows what zipping is. Attach the zipped document within an email, send the zip document, then the receiver needs to unzip, open, and then write a long email describing the feedback instead of showing the feedback. So it's a quite difficult process. So this company came to me and asked me to streamline their positioning, to tell them what's wrong, to help them improve their sales. They had a ton of different requests. They didn't really know what was a problem. They just knew that they wanted research. So we did research, and something fascinating happened. The company's positioning was the solution to pinpoint on HTML. And after research, we realized that 9 out of 10 customers were not using the pinpointing system. So the company was a successful company that had a lot of power users, but most of them didn't stay within the product because of the flagship feature of it. The founding team thought that their biggest success was a feature that almost nobody was using. When I went back to the founder and told him that your flagship feature is not really used, he told me that I'm straight crazy. He said that I don't know what I'm talking about. And then I showed him videos of people, collated video of
Yeah, yeah.
people actually saying that the reason that they are using that is because it helps them display the HTML, and then the feedback process keeps happening within emails. Because when a customer uh, receives that and doesn't really understands the commenting system and the pinpointing system straight ahead, they don't really disturb him, the client, by forcing him to use this feature. They just continue exchanging emails. And another reason is that some of these customers told me that, when our client uses a little bit of the feature and a little bit of email, we actually stop using the feature and we just keep using the email. So we realized that their whole positioning was wrong. And going back to your question about churn,
Yeah.
sometimes the reason churn exists is because we have a wrong positioning, because we
Yes.
give wrong expectations. That was a very fascinating story and case study, because the founder wouldn't believe, and that's a very common thing in my work. I go back to the businesses and I tell them what their customers say, but in the way that I manage to get the insight, and they don't believe me. They need to see evidence, and they see videos, and it's crazy, and it's also a very satisfying moment when this comes. Yeah, lots of these satisfying moments of truth for the founders.
So, did you increase their sales?
We did a couple of very specific things that didn't straight ahead increase their sales, but put balance into their funnel. When I mean balance into their funnel, I mean they might have a growth rate that is very high, but then they might have a very high churn rate in the same time. So what did that increases their commercial success? No, if lots of people come and then lots of people leave, it's it's wrong. It shouldn't happen. So by fixing their positioning, we made sure that the people that get into the product convert in a very high conversion rate and stay.
Mm-hmm.
Makes sense? But when you streamline a positioning and when you say the truth about the expectations that people need to have from you, that also might discourage people. So um, it might reduce your growth rate. It might show that you onboard less customers, but in reality, at the end of the month, you make more money because the customers that you onboard, they know what they expect and they
Mm-hmm.
stay. So these are the imbalances that we might face that sometimes create misunderstandings. Because think of that. Think of having a product that oversells an expectation that doesn't deliver it. You have a very high conversion rate at the beginning, but then lots of people get discouraged and leave. That might create the misunderstanding to the team that marketing works great, but product under delivers, while it's the exact opposite thing. You see, these are imbalances that cost a lot, cost into attention, cost into resources, cost into effort, energy, and we fix them. And then the whole thing works more smoothly.
So basically, your approach is to ask the customer and find out how you could find the product so it meets their expectations rather than underperform.
My job is basically to go back to the founder and tell him exactly exactly in surgical accuracy what his customers want, so that they can build the thing that they want and communicate it in the way that everybody will understand.
That's great. So, what's your approach to that? Is that one-on-one with individual customers? What's your approach? Is it sort of in the trenches, or is it research? Is it testing with, I don't know, how do you find out? What's your approach to finding out what the customer wants?
It's a mix of tactics. My favorite one is undoubtedly user interviews. I use a lot of user interviews because the level of empathy that you can create from one-to-one conversations cannot be compared with anything. But user interviews aren't scalable. You can really have a scalable research project only with user interviews. And at the end of the day, when you use a research tactic such as interviews, you need to have another research tactic that validates the other one. So in simple words, when you do interviews, you need to have some form of survey in the same time, and then compare the very hard findings of the one if they resemble the hard findings of the other. It's like a guardian. It tells you if you're doing a good job. So here are the tactics that I'm using typically. Interviews, number one. Second, surveys, ad hoc surveys. Third, I use the actual client touch points, either human touch points or digital touch points, as feedback sources. For example, you have a salesperson that onboards people. I influence the way, the questions that the salesperson is asking, and I take the answers as feedback. You have customer support and customer success. I train them into doing different questions that will actually become feedback for the rest of the team. You have an onboarding flow with a couple of questions, such as what is the size of your business? What do you do? I might influence the questions that you ask there so that it helps me a little bit as well as a researcher. You have a cancellation experience. I will definitely influence the cancellation survey so that it gives me information as well. The very good thing about that is when you do interviews, that gives you depth. When you do surveys or you influence the client touch points, that gives you scale. We need both. We need both scale and depth. So these are pretty much the tactics that I use, along with just observation with user recordings or observation of what the user is doing with our product. Make sense?
Mm-hmm. So, what sort of software as a service companies do you mentioned A and B, B2B software service companies. Are you typically working with software as a service companies that are working in a certain sort of monthly subscription or product price point? Is it high value, mid value, low value?
I, I I prefer not to work with enterprise level businesses, and the reason
Mm-hmm.
for that is because when a B2B SaaS is enterprise B2B, things are a little bit different. You have less customers. It's a very sales driven process. There is not the same level of transparency when it comes to your product roadmap. Big customers, big clients influence what you build and
Mm-hmm.
how. You don't address a big market. You have different contracts. You might have year contracts, not monthly contracts. So the nature of enterprise level B2B resembles more a stable business, if I may say. So yes, there is also research that can be done there, but it's not as fascinating and it's not the same. So I prefer working with companies that their second B is a small business.
Mm-hmm.
B to small business, because lots of people are coming in, lots of people are coming out. There is like a variety of data. Scientifically speaking, I have material to work with. That's why I prefer them. And also, because there is so much material to work with, there is so much impact, so high impact of my work towards what they do.
That's great. So I'm curious about, is there any mentors or resources or books that you've read, training you've done, or people that um, help you, mentors, that have helped you in your journey as an entrepreneur?
Oh, definitely, definitely. I will mention a couple of names and a couple of books. The first name is Clayton Christensen. Clayton Christensen is basically the person that he wrote the Innovator's Dilemma, but he's also one of the first people or the first person that mentioned the term jobs to be done. We lost Clayton last year, a very big loss for jobs to be done, research and science overall. But Clayton Christensen was also working with some people. It's like I consider him like Jesus and his students. So one of his students, his right hand, Bob Muesta, is a living legend at the moment of jobs to be done. He has written a lot of books. Just check him out, and you can find lots of material about Bob Moesta. Another person that I'm following, another great scientist, is Tony Alwick. So, what is the difference between Bob Moesta, Tony Alwick, Clayton Christensen? Jobs to be done is a very big thing, and there are schools of thought. The one school of thought is the outcome driven innovation school of thought. This is Tony Alwick's school of thought that says that when we buy a product, we basically expect a specific outcome. On the other hand, we have Bob and Clay who speak about the forces, the jobs to be done forces, the jobs to be done timeline, and the customer journey. And they speak about specific jobs. It's, in my view, it's just an um, these are little differences, little details that happen between the academia.
Mm-hmm.
When it comes to actionable application of
Mm-hmm.
what we do, those differences are not really important. But both schools of thought have very important things to share. The fourth one is Alan Clement and his book, When Coffee and Kale Compete. Very nice book, one of the first books that I read about that. And actually, I was surprised with Alan. He's a best-selling author, but I had a question about what he was writing in the book. So I found him on LinkedIn and just messaged him. And he replied after 30 minutes. And we jumped on a call to explain to me what he meant within his book. And I found that exactly what I want to be in life. This guy, Alan Clement, is a scientist at heart.
Mm-hmm.
So he wouldn't bother jumping into a conversation with a random dude that just spoke to him on LinkedIn just to explain the science.
So, what was the book?
When Coffee and Kale Compete. And another book, Tony Alwick's book, is What Customers Want by Tony Alwick, a great book. Another book is Demand Side Sales by Bob Moesta. These are all of them are great books, and all of them are great authors. So check the other books that they have written. I definitely trust that they are great.
So, Alan Clement was When Coffee and Kale Compete, is that correct?
Exactly. Yes.
Love the title. And What Customers Want, is that correct?
Tony Alwick. That's
Alwick,
Tony
yep,
Alwick.
yep. And the other one was
Demand Side Sales by Bob Moesta.
Demand Side Sales.
Exactly.
Okay, great. All right. We might mention those in the notes. Fantastic. So I'm always intrigued by what sort of educational resources and motivation and inspiration comes from, and I think thank you for sharing that. That's really, really cool. So just to wrap things up, and we're over time, is what are a couple of top tips that you'd love to share with our audience and listeners and viewers? What you've learned as an entrepreneur and leaping into the unknown and starting your own business and creating your own freedom, even though you answer to many bosses now instead of just one. They're your customers. So what are a couple of the most important things you've learned along the way that you can share with our audience in their journey, and what people can learn from your experience as an entrepreneur? What's the top 2 or 3 things you'd like to share with them?
I have to think about that. Definitely the first thing is don't look at what other people are doing.
Mm-hmm.
Only look what you are doing. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, I'm not sure if that's definitely realistic because you have to check your competition, but
Yeah, but I agree with you. Yeah, it's fantastic. Yeah.
don't obsess about what other people are doing. And that I see that in B2B SaaS companies as well. In lots of cases, we see a little team obsessing about another team, building exactly what they're building, focusing what they do, and thinking that this team knows what they do and we don't, so let's copy them. While the reality is that on the other side, there is another little team that doesn't know what they do, and they are obsessed about someone else. Another thing that I have realized and supports the statement of don't obsess about what other people do, is that on LinkedIn everybody pretends to be successful and great. Um, Most of these people, including me, we are people. We are just people at the end of the day. We have personal problems. We might have financial issues at some point in our life. We have a family. We have a mom and a dad that we love and we care about, a girlfriend or a boyfriend that makes our life difficult. So when you start being personal with people, you realize that they drop this I'm successful professional shield and they also become personal. And that's one of the most important things that I realized lately, that I can make friends out of this community by being vulnerable. So the
Mm-hmm.
second thing, embrace your vulnerability. I mean, LinkedIn is a great space for us to pretend to be successful for clients, but we have to be vulnerable within people and be true. um, and that has a return on investment. That's a good business decision as well, trust me in that. So that's the second thing. The third thing, I would say, um, take care of yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Taking care of yourself doesn't mean being very uh, not pushing yourself towards the limits, but not pushing yourselves in an unhealthy manner, not pushing yourself to perform just for the sake of performing, just for the obsession of being the first or second or third. Push yourself to perform, eat well, crush the gym, um, rest your mind, have vacation, uh, just push yourself to the limit in a healthy way, not in an obsessive way. I used to do that in an obsessive way, and I got burned out. And when I mean when we say burnout, it's not like the common phrase that we might use in a daily life. Like a serious burnout, a legit burnout, includes you not being able to work at all because you are psychologically and mentally uh, um, on the floor, having digestion issues, having serious headaches. So it's an actual thing. It's not like I'm tired. Oh, I'm burned out. No, being tired doesn't mean that you're burned out. So I wasn't taking care of myself. So these are my 3 tips. I just thought of them. Sorry if they don't sound very structured. I hope you get the point.
I love them. And guess what? I think questions that come from the heart, in other words, and from the gut, which is what you've shared, I think they're the most powerful ones, at any rate. So thank you for sharing that. That's fantastic. Thank you, Apollos, for sharing. Aggelos. Sorry, I called your name wrong at the end. Thanks, Aggelos, for sharing your journey with us. It's been absolutely fabulous, and so looking forward to maybe visiting you in Greece one day, and and seeing some more of your beautiful islands. I've been to Mykonos, and I've been to Athens, and I've been to the Colosseum, and it's fabulous. So So thank you very much. Before we go, how can people find you? What's the best contact details?
If you want us to geek out about research, you can find me directly on LinkedIn and send me a message. More than happy to discuss research. You can also find me on my website, growthsandwich.com. You can find me on Facebook as well. But that's pretty much it. I'm not a big fan of social media except LinkedIn. So prefer LinkedIn.
Thanks, Aggelos. That's absolutely fine. It's been an absolute
Thank you,
pleasure to
Jeff.
have you on this show and sharing your stories and showing your humanity.
It was my pleasure and my honor to be here, Jeff, with you.
Thanks for your time.
Thank you.